Good morning, everybody. Welcome back. Once again, my name is Gabriel. I'm from Block Show, and this is Unitize. We are on day one of Global Leaders. Joining me today are two gentlemen who I call friends. Two of them are also, one of them is probably one of my longest friends in Hong Kong. His name is Roland. I also know him as the guy who finds me the best beef noodles in Hong Kong, right? The other person is also one of my best friends in blockchain. His name is Clement. I think most of you know him, but because he only wears this color T-shirt with this logo, better known as Genesis Block, they are the largest. So I just found this out 10 minutes ago. He's actually the largest Bitcoin ATM provider in Asia, but they're also very famous as being a OTC and a pop desk and based out of Hong Kong. If you ask me and anybody who's been around the block in Asia, you'll definitely heard. If you actually don't know what Clement looks like, everybody has definitely heard of Clement. I would definitely say that. Gentlemen, it's been great. It's been great for you to join us today. Hope everything is going okay. I'm just going to jump straight into it. And
thanks for having us.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure. Oh yeah, by the way, everybody, Roland's also one of the key so-called investors and driving forces behind the startup ecosystem in Hong Kong as well. He's part of Cocoon Internet Ventures, where they're based near Causeway Bay. I can't remember the office address because I can't pronounce it. My Cantonese is terrible. And also, obviously, he also is an active investor in the tech scene as well. So, gentlemen, thank you again for joining me. Very first question, just want to know how you guys are doing. What's the, and Clement, we'll just start off with you as well on that note. What's the lay of the land in Hong Kong today? How's business and how's 2020 treating you so far?
Yeah, thanks for having us both on Unitize. So with Hong Kong, a lot has happened 2020 has just gone past so quickly. I think most of you guys probably know that end of 2019, we've had this political movement that's been going on, a lot of vandalizing, a lot of people have been on the streets, and a lot of businesses, especially retail, has really been suffering. Same with hotels. We've had tourism has decreased. I think for the last 6 months, and then the coronavirus happened. I think Hong Kong is one of the Hong Kong being there's no tax for goods. A lot of tourists come in. A lot of businesses have been affected. And recently, what happened in Hong Kong is there's this new national security law that just got put in place a couple of days ago on the 1st of July. I think we're still digesting. There's still a group of people that don't really like it. And we'll see how it plays out. So for us, we're seeing more interest in people understanding Bitcoin. They're looking to move their money out of Hong Kong. Small group of people, but for us, since we're in the digital asset space, we've been doing pretty well so far, luckily.
When you say well, how well is that compared to, say, previous years and everything? And also maybe as a follow-up, Roland, you could probably add in as to in comparison, how are things doing for, I would say, the more traditional, it's a bit weird calling tech investments traditional now in today's world, but in comparison, do you echo that? Is it still something that's going on in Hong Kong?
Yeah, well, thank you again, Gabriel, for having me join. Great to see you. Great to see Clement. I echo a lot of what Emmett, I think Clement nicely summarized, obviously a lot of the issues that the city has faced. But as a venture capital investor, I think the context and the lens through which we look at things is quite important. So I would say to look at what the opportunities are and how Hong Kong is doing, the perspective and lens I use is a bit more higher level. I look at, well, what exactly is this kind of global struggle or tension? Where is that going? Why is that happening? And on a macro level, what are the dynamics that are creating a lot of these tensions? And so, in that kind of context, you get that narrative of, the rise of China, the rise of Asia, as an economy, as a population, as a lot of the citizens in various parts of Asia do come into a solid middle class, and that has a very, very big impact on the global economy. And what I'm saying here is we're seeing kind of a, what people sometimes call a paradigm shift or a systemic shift in kind of where the economy and money flow is going. So kind of in that context, without going to the individual details and individual small time frames, what we're seeing is a lot of new opportunities happening here. And because of new opportunities, a lot of them will have a technology element to it. But it's not just purely because of technology that makes these opportunities great. It's just it's more of a macro movement. Countries and a lot of these different places in Asia, are really getting their footing now and having the sufficient resources and good kind of incentives and sometimes some good government structure to ensure that this momentum continues for Asia. So with that, with that context, things in the VC space, anyone investing in kind of new opportunities, ultimately to improve the lives of the billions of people that live in this region, as long as you're betting on things that are useful, that are solving real problems, you will be doing well now and continue to do well, I think, for years to come, simply because of that momentum of this rising population.
Okay, so would you say that, and going back to Clement, would you say that even though there's been obviously a lot of trouble, or rather say excitement in Hong Kong, the last 6 months for you guys have been good, or has it been like normal where people just keep your head over it?
Yeah, so I mean, we started in 2017, and at the very beginning, we wanted to do 3 things, and we pivoted once actually. So at the very beginning, we only did OTC, we only ran ATMs, we actually started as a co-working space, just thinking, we want to build a community, we want to do events, but during the day, we've got so much space. Why don't we sell some desk space? But within 2 months, we realized we don't know how to run this thing. So we just gave that up. And instead, we started a prop desk instead. And that's actually taken over everything else. Prop for us is 80% of the revenue. And, luckily, this is the interesting part about Bitcoin, right? When there is volatility, there's opportunity. And Q1, we actually had one of the best quarters, actually the best quarter. And we have a strategic investor come in, invested in us in March. So Q1 was one of our best quarter. And I think moving forward, what Roland said was spot on. We've been very bricks and mortar. We've been using spreadsheets. We've been we're trying to automate a lot of the trade flow as much as we can. So part of our investors very strong at tech, and they're going to be helping us out with creating. So what we've launched recently is our RFQ platform, and when it comes to managing our own books, more automation will come into place. The goal really is to scale, and for the end of this year, or this year's plan is to grow the community, grow user base. We've got 2,000 clients already, and the way how we did business before having our strategic investor, we realized this is going to be very difficult to scale. So I'm not sure if anyone knows people that haven't done OTC or crypto OTC. How it works is people trade on chat. So you do all that onboarding, KYC, and then you get put in a group chat. And whenever you want to quote, you're actually in a group chat of 15 people. That includes our team, our traders, and it's very, very manual. And imagine having 100 clients pinging you at the same time. You just cannot serve all of them. So the technology side is something that we want to spend more resources and money on, and so that's we'll be able to scale through that way.
What I'm actually curious about though is this idea of causation and correlation, especially when we talk about the momentum shifting to Bitcoin, as you mentioned. And to me, that's not surprising. Exactly like you say, in times of adversity or uncertainty, alternatives away from mainstream, where there could be a lot of presumptions or assumptions about what could happen to those mainstream assets. You would kind of, from a mitigating risk perspective, you want to diversify. But I also wonder, Bitcoin is an option for diversification, but is it concentrated enough? Are people looking at that kind of like gold, your usual kind of safe havens of gold and Japanese yen, for example? It's a question of percentage exposure. So as people are looking into Bitcoin as alternative, and I think that narrative and that fact, it is happening. But to then say that it's correlated to being a safe, place as gold and as everything else, I'm not sure if that is stretching, that narrative a bit too far. Love to hear your views on that, because as a traditionalist, you can see the alternatives, but you also look a lot at the concentration. Yeah.
So I mean, so for the last 3 years, what we've seen is before 2017, people. So in Asia, so one step back, in Asia, there's a lot of countries that have capital control. China is one of them. Thailand has capital control. Korea has capital control. What that means is individuals or entities cannot send money out of their country. There's a limitation on that. And before crypto, there's these underground money exchange that will facilitate that. That then moved to people discovered Bitcoin, how they can just buy Bitcoin with renminbi, buy Bitcoin with Korean won. And the Bitcoin can be sent anywhere in the world, sold for another type of currency, such as US dollar in the States or Australian dollars in Australia. And most of these people that introduced the end users are brokers. They used to run money exchanges or underground exchanges, very gray area, or possibly like not even legal. But they've discovered crypto and they've been really educating the end users on this. And 2018, 19, instead of using Bitcoin because it's so volatile, back then people could lose 5, 10%, or even 20% just because Bitcoin moved within the space of 30 minutes. We saw in March 12 where Bitcoin actually took a 30, 40% dip just in the space of a day, and it is still volatile. But these brokers grew and they start using stablecoin, in particular USDT. What we're also seeing now since 2019 is these brokers actually trust stablecoins, which is backed by US dollar, on a particular blockchain. It can be Bitcoin, it can be Ethereum, it could be Tron. They trust that more than their bank. And I don't know if when you see USDT right now is at a $9 billion market cap. It doubled this year. Part of the reason is internet banking in China now doesn't use tokens, it's all Face ID. So I think a lot of the people that have been trying to move money or parking assets in banks are now trying to get the money out into stablecoins, and they trust their wallets more, or they trust their brokers more. That's why there's like such a big demand in stablecoins. Now, I think in the next few months, what we're going to see is now the thing is, like, a lot of people know that it's still a company that are managing these stable coins, and right now the US doesn't have their own stable coin. With China, they're issuing DCEP, which is their own currency on the blockchain. My big question, my big fear is at what point will the government step in and tell these issuers that hey, you're not allowed to do this, because they can. I mean, I don't know how it's going to play out, but right now, stablecoin is easily, US dollar stablecoin is easily 10 billion. Will they step in when it's 15, 20? I'm sure they will at some point. Then there will be a big scare on stablecoin. And then where is all this stablecoin going to go? A lot of people a lot of people that are holding stablecoin right now don't have that experience. So we've had that experience in 2018, 2019, where, you know, there's some negative news on USDT. And people that were holding USDT, what they did was sell that into another type of stablecoin that was more regulated, such as Paxos. They're regulated by the NYDFS. Or they would just buy Bitcoin and just get out of their stablecoin position. So now that there's like 10 billion of that, which is like significantly higher, I think there's definitely a group of users that are holding this that haven't experienced that moment. And I think that could be a big catalyst to push Bitcoin and other crypto assets up. But to answer your question, like, is Bitcoin a safe haven? I think the adoption curve, like there's still a lot of people that don't know how to use it. It's still very difficult to use. I mean, and it doesn't help when people tell you, oh, don't store your coins on the exchange. Make sure you, have your own wallet, store your seed, get a hardware wallet. I mean, it's a lot of work, initial work to do in order to, I mean, it's quite scary if you hear about, like, you know, someone telling you, oh, if you lose your seed, if your seed gets hacked or your phone gets hacked, it's going to be gone. It's gone. Like, until you really spend time on, you know, cybersecurity, on your own email, on even on your computer and your phone, you're not going to be comfortable like holding millions of dollars of assets yourself. I think I personally obviously think it's a safe haven. I'm extremely bullish on Bitcoin in the next couple of years, due to, I think, due to the economic macro, environment. It has set Bitcoin up very nicely for the next couple of years.
And it just reminded me, and sorry, Gabriel, I had one more kind of very curious thing. Clement just mentioned something, and it got me thinking. You think, if I understand correctly, at least a lot of the Bitcoin wallets now, and correct me if I'm wrong, but a lot of Chinese citizens or Chinese people have a big exposure to Bitcoin one way or another. And I wonder, so I'm not sure if that's still the case today, but if that still is the case today, I wonder if the geopolitical tensions, especially still the use of US dollar needed to purchase Bitcoin, will, if supposedly, these tensions increase and there starts to be limitations on the use of USD, or the ability for the government to have jurisdiction on certain uses of US dollar, which will affect, therefore, the purchase of Bitcoin. I wonder if there's discussion happening or considerations between these Chinese holders of Bitcoin and how they would be affected, if on the currency side, certain tensions start escalating.
So I'm not sure. I would probably say more people in China know what or own. Again, I'm not sure, but I would say Tether is USDT or stablecoin has gotten a more adoption than Bitcoin itself. Just the fact that it's stable, so your question was like, what was your question?
For example, if the majority of the Bitcoin out there, or a good significant portion of the Bitcoin out there, is held in wallets that ultimately belong to Chinese citizens, then would there be a case where their Bitcoin could be deemed, I don't know, illegal or inappropriate in any way because they're using US dollar to go ahead and trade for those, and you might get into theoretical money laundering issues. In essence, you're within the jurisdiction of the United States government because it's using USD and therefore affects Bitcoin.
So, I mean, that boils down to, obviously, your question is sort of like, oh, will the government start cracking down and declare it illegal to own Bitcoin, that sort of thing. So I think, again, this is not confirmed, but I think we're moving towards the whole space, including China, including US, and everywhere in the world. I mean, at some point, I remember India also banned Bitcoin outright, but now they're moving towards a direction where you can trade. Hong Kong, I think the regulators are actively trying to understand what this is all about, and they want to choose to. They definitely want to choose and regulate this whole space rather than ban it outright. Because the thing is, like, they also know that they can't just stop this movement going on. It's exactly like they've back in the 90s they tried to stop people downloading music, which is a peer-to-peer. Like I think back then it was Kazaa and you know, right now LimeWire. Yes, like I mean, I think they understand well enough that, you know, even if they ban this thing, like it will only cause more people getting interested in it, and most importantly is that they can still transact because they can't just shut down the network. So and it's a clear sign that well, at least with Hong Kong and Thailand, what they're doing is like there's some initiative with a digital currency as well. And then we're seeing China with DCEP. They definitely want to be using blockchain. And right now, the situation is like they're not banning people from buying digital assets, like whether it's Bitcoin or USDT. You just need, so exchanges in China, you cannot deposit renminbi or the Chinese yuan directly to the exchange. Crypto to crypto is perfectly fine. You can also do peer-to-peer transactions, which, you know, the top two exchanges in China are Huobi and OKEX. They have a C2C or P2P. Essentially, is like a marketplace where the exchanges don't take any fee. And if you're a seller of coins, you can post your order there, and another client, another user, can just take that offer and buy it. And the funds go from the client to the other client. So the exchange doesn't take the funds at all. And I think at some point, we need to see what's going to happen. But I mean, rumors saying that after DCEP launches, there's going to be licenses for certain exchange where they can deposit, you know, DCEP, withdraw DCEP, or essentially just accept fiat money. Then they can know. So the issue with like how to get the Bitcoin out, or like, you know, capital control, I think they know that like it happens. Like people are using Tether to move money out. So one of the rumors that's been saying is like possibly is you can invest in Bitcoins, but you won't be able to withdraw it out of the exchange. So you want to invest in other types of digital assets, that's fine, but, you know, it has to stay within the exchange. So I'm not sure. Again, this is just a rumor. I think this year will be extremely interesting to watch what actually happens in the space, in the regulatory space. Another interesting, yeah, I mean.
So I want to bring things a little bit back closer to home for both of you. I want to talk a little bit more about Hong Kong. So and I do not want to get into the political side of things, but now given like what Clement you just mentioned 2 days ago, the new national security law and everything like that, do you see that movement of people? So we spoke about safe haven. You know, obviously, I think we've got a little bit of contrasting views, but I think the point here is that given what's happened in the last couple of days and probably the last 1 month, are people in Hong Kong going to start reacting to digital assets like the way you just mentioned in China? Do people will people basically, or really your peers, your clients, especially those who are based in Hong Kong, who are like, okay, I need to look at this. I need to find a way to store, especially that And correct me if I'm wrong, because of no capital gains, if I put it into Bitcoin, Ethereum, or something like that, like some of my money is safe. That this is a plan B, or in certain cases even a plan C, I would say for that. Is that the same for Hong Kong?
I'll start off by saying, like, before the national security law, I mean, there has been both sides, whether they're, pro-China or pro, in Hong Kong, there's like the yellow people, there's the blue people, basically it's anti or pro-government. I think both sides were worried about Hong Kong, and both sides think about how to get the money out. Not necessarily Bitcoin or digital asset. I think that's the first step. Is like, okay, Hong Kong is not a safe place to live. I want to move out. And the good thing about Hong Kong, a positive thing, is like there's no capital control. Like you can literally take all your money out and wire it
go
to
somewhere
anywhere
else
in the world. Yeah. You can even take cash out from the bank, put it in your suitcase, declare it when you get out the border, and leave like that. There's no control. Like as long as you declare it and you can prove that, oh, I took it out from my bank and I'm leaving, you can do that. Like there's no restrictions whatsoever. As opposed to places like Thailand or Korea, like you declare it, you're not allowed to bring out more than X amount. So I think with this national security law in place, I think the people that the pro-China people obviously are very happy about this, and I would say they're not looking to. I think that has stopped, and what we're seeing is some of the the pro they want like more freedom. They want the other side of the those people that want to leave. They can. I mean, they can leave. Are interested in moving their money out and looking into various ways to. But a lot of the fact is like they just don't know that, oh, you can just carry that money out, no problem. I think the worst type of people are the ones that only have a Hong Kong passport and don't have any other offshore bank accounts. They're the ones that are figuring out what are the alternatives. So yeah, I mean, we're seeing a lot of discussions on forums where how to open, for example, TransferWise account, being a Hong Kong citizen. So some people are just buying SIM cards from the UK and then using some of their friends' addresses, because all you need is a UK number, which you can get them here, and you just need an email, you need a UK number, and then you can get a debit card. And a TransferWise account is actually pretty amazing, how you can just get a US dollar, Australian dollar, Singaporean account, and yeah, and just make the transfer directly from your Hong Kong bank, and then you get it. So I mean, options are there, but some people are looking into Bitcoin as well.
Yeah, Bill, you have something to say?
Interesting. Yeah, what's also interesting though is, I do see the same news, what Clement mentioned, that, there is that sentiment of worry, uncertainty that has led to some people looking at alternative options. But we also see, over the last month, there has been a massive influx or interest in buying the Hong Kong dollar, to the point where the Hong Kong Monetary Authority had to go and purchase a lot of US dollars in order to maintain the fixed exchange rate. I mean, just for reference, the Hong Kong dollar and US dollar is has been agreed by policy to fit within a exchange rate band. And so every time, because of currency demand, if the demand for one currency exceeds that band, then there is a policy to purchase the other currency to make sure the float stays within this band. So it's interesting as an observation to see that while there is certainly inquiries and people looking to move money out, there is also is significant in the billions of dollars of Hong Kong dollar purchases. The most obvious reason that I could think of, based on just what we see in the news, is that with the U.S. discouraging or actively trying to take certain Chinese companies off their stock exchanges, it has kind of created an open invitation for a lot of Chinese tech companies that would otherwise or traditionally listed on the Dow Jones or NASDAQ are now coming to Hong Kong. The latest example being JD.com. So they just did a secondary listing, I believe last week, if not this week. So I think there is an interesting kind of in parallel movement of money. And back to the question of, ultimately what does that mean for the city? I think in terms of as a place for opportunity and a city that manages capital, manages money for an international audience, I have confidence that will remain. The infrastructure here and the way in which people do business, just the culture and the mindset and just the way things work, it's very hard to replicate elsewhere. But what may change is the mix. It's the mix of who is contributing to this capital pool. Traditionally, they call this an international financial center because the assumption is you have a very balanced or a good mix with all sorts of, money from all around the world. And, because of certain geopolitical tensions, we may be seeing a shift in that mix to perhaps a more Chinese or Asia demographic or source of asset being managed in Hong Kong, and maybe less of European or US assets. That could be the possibility, but ultimately in terms of the net amount or the opportunities, I think that just continue growing as opposed to decreasing. And so as a business environment, I think there's every reason to be bullish, but we just have to reckon with the change in who the counterparts are in doing deals in the city.
Okay, we're almost out of time. So based on everything Roland said, right, Clement, we'll give you the chance to wrap things up here. So what's it gonna look like for the next 6 months? I would say for Hong Kong, because I think just now we were very broad stroke about the industry. Right. What do you think will happen in Hong Kong in the next 6 months?
That's interesting because I think China is not going to let Hong Kong die. I think people that are not happy will really take this seriously and look for somewhere else. We are seeing that, especially the activists that have been at the forefront, politicians now. I mean, part of the law is like, if you have, like from the 1st of July, if you've done anything that pretty much is harmful to the country. Again, it's not very specific, but people need to watch what they say on the streets, and you cannot say Hong Kong independence, that sort of stuff. Otherwise, like, you will have to go to court and face justice. I think more of those people will have to figure out a way either to move out of Hong Kong, but ultimately, I think Hong Kong will continue to operate. I think protests will definitely be suppressed. In terms of business-wise, like we're extremely bullish on this whole space. We think people will care more about privacy, and when it comes to privacy, like very naturally you get into understand more about security, privacy, and you look at very, very naturally you'll become interested into like these digital assets that, I mean, a lot of people are doing very cool projects that that allow users to have more control. So I think in general, I'm extremely bullish about this space, and we'll see what happens in Hong Kong. But generally, I think everything will be fine in Hong Kong.
I don't disagree. I think just to wrap up, and thank you, gentlemen, for the thoughts. Even though I'm doing this conversation from Singapore, and Roland and I, and even Joseph and Clement, we make a lot of Singapore versus Hong Kong jokes and everything. But I don't disagree. I think Hong Kong people are persistent. There's a certain stubbornness we have in them, and I'll be very interesting to see what happens, not just in Hong Kong, but I think in the space we're in, both in the investment and digital asset space. I think the next 6 months, in conclusion, will be very, very interesting. And one should not, no matter under any circumstance, ignore what can be done in Hong Kong, not just from a potential, but what is already there already. And to wrap it up, thank you very much, gentlemen. Hope you enjoy the rest of the event. And for everybody there, we'll be right back right after this. Thank you very much.